listening to The Rob Dibble Show.
Back on The Rob Dibble Show with Ben Darnell, getting you ready for the weekend. To help us with the trade deadline and then some, Jim Duquette, former general manager with the Mets and the Orioles, and now with SNY, MLB, XM Sirius, the MLB channel. He does it all. Jim, how are you, sir?
What's going on, Dibs? How are you today?
I'm surprised at what the Yankees and the Mets did. Mets kind of sold off a lot of stuff and said, we're not going to do anything, try to win until 25-26. Yankees think that they're fine. They didn't get anything picked from their organization. Can you explain what the New York franchises did?
The Yankees are in it to win it, according to their general manager, Dibs.
Okay. All right.
I can't quite figure out what in it to win it means when you acquire a middle reliever, and that's it. I thought they took the trade deadline off, basically, if you look at the results. I mean, I know they were working at it. A lot of teams were, and I know it was a seller's market, right? I mean, I don't know, there's 7 or 8 teams that were maybe, when you added the Mets to it, that increased the interest level a little bit, and the Cardinals and White Sox did some things, and you had to take the Cubs out because they became a buyer about a week before the deadline. So I think start with the Yankees. I mean, when you're in the mix like that, and this, from playing, like, you need your GM to do something, right? I mean, you're expecting to do that. Your fan base is expecting to do it. I thought they really came up short. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that it turned out that way. Even if they got another reliever and let's say one bat, like let's say they pursued Tommy Pham or Randall Grichuk or somebody like that even. Right. To add to the mix. So I was disappointed in the way it turned out for the Yankees.
Well, let me ask you this. Can you get a read on Hal Steinbrenner versus George?
Well, I mean, can you imagine if George Steinbrenner sat through this deadline, what would have happened? Like, I mean, he would have lost his mind, right? I mean, he was pushing the envelope. The luxury tax and the threshold that is there, it was a line in the sand that could get washed away by just pushing his foot over it, right? Like he didn't really put much consideration into that, and there was some good and some bad, obviously, with that. But with Hal, it's definitely more run like a business, and they run things within that front office analytically, even though, they've added some baseball evaluators to it. They really crunch the numbers, and I think that to me is something that, I don't know, it's kind of scratching my head. Which way is better, right? It's been too long that they haven't won the World Series. And they've been to the postseason, a lot during that stretch, during Hal's tenure, but the World Series is really how they're judged, and there haven't been enough titles.
For the Mets and owner Steve Cohen, this is his first time around for a trade deadline. What lessons do you think that he has learned through this first year?
I'll tell you the thing on that is, and I think this goes for almost any fan base. We see it in our sport. You cannot buy a World Series championship. You just can't do it. I mean, the Dodgers last year had a large payroll, had the best, the most wins or like the top 5 wins in the regular season in their franchise history. And they got bounced by the Padres, right, in the division series. And so this year they said, well, heck with that. We're going to cut our payroll $100 million and play some of these young kids. And where are they now? Oh, they're in first place. So I think for the Mets, the answer is you don't have to go paying, in the high rent district and paying, overly priced, and then, kind of older starting pitchers. If you don't have a well-balanced team all the way around, then you're not going to end up where you want to go anyway. So for me, some of the message that they have had since they traded Verlander and Scherzer, in my opinion, is they're going to scale back. Well, yeah, they're going to scale back from the largest payroll in the history of the sport. Of course they are. They're not going up. But I mean, if they scaled it back to 280 or 290 million, it wouldn't surprise me. That's still a lot of money. It's still going to be one of the top three in the sport. So I don't think in the end, when they say scale it back, it's not going to be a rebuild. I think it's going to be scaled back from where it was this year, which was ridiculously high.
Talking to Jim Duquette, former general manager, Orioles and the Mets. So when you're in the front office, and I tried to explain this the other day, you're getting your marching orders from the ownership, and as far as renting players, controlling younger players, like when Chris Sale went to the Red Sox, he had 3 years left on his deal, and then giving up the future, going into your minor leagues, dipping in there, giving away a bunch of prospects and things like that. So, when you were in the front office, how did things work, and was it the same every year, or did it change?
No, it changed, but each year had obviously depending on where you were with the team and what you were looking to do, where the holes were in your club, and a lot of times, you're working the phones, but you're also informing your owners. Hey, this is what I think we need to do. The owners are watching the team like you are, but they're not watching it as finely as you are. And your job is to, balance the short term, what you're seeing now, with the long term too. And so, and trying to figure out what is the financial component that your owner is allowing you to spend at the deadline for the final 2 months of the season. Are you taking on long-term money or just the rest of the season? So that part of it changes on a regular basis. I did, anytime we did trade deadline deals, we tried to save a little bit of room in the payroll for adding, assuming that, to the number, wherever the number was, you didn't go all the way up to it at the start of the season because you knew you had to plan for somebody, that you were going to hopefully add, for the postseason. So, that part, but you better educate, your owner and, how you value certain guys and certain prospects. They're up to speed on that because they're assets to the team, right? So surprisingly, there's more information out there now than ever that the owners can kind of, keep you honest, right, and to challenge you with pretty good questions. They're pretty careful on who you're trying to trade and who you're trading for, and I think that helps in some ways helps dictate what you're going to do at the deadline. But you're hopeful that they give you the freedom to run and do the trades that you hope that you want to do, right, without too much restriction.
Just seeing this, we got kind of a Jim Duquette series there. Mets in Baltimore to play the Orioles. And speaking of those
yes,
Orioles,
I'm going down there, boys.
Awesome.
There you go.
You should throw out first pitch. They should be giving you the red carpet treatment down there. For the Orioles, they just got Jack Flaherty. It kind of paid off for a win already in that deal. But did they get enough? Do they have any holes that still need to be addressed or at least concerned about moving into the postseason?
It's fascinating for them. We had Mike Elias on my show today, and one of my criticisms of them was that I don't feel like they did enough. Now, the way Flaherty pitched yesterday, if he pitches that way, okay, I think the rotation, they should be able to piece it together. But as we've seen, all of us have seen, when you use your bullpen as much, and Dibs, years when you were used a lot, like, that first half is a grind, and if you have a tired bullpen for the second half, it's hard to unravel all the usage, and it usually catches up to you at the last 2 months. So I felt like they needed a little bit more protection in that area. Now, in their defense, they have the guy Tyler Wells, who they sent to the minors. He's actually was a really good reliever a couple of years ago, so I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him up in the bullpen. They sent out this kid Brian Baker for like a 2-week reset. He was struggling, but if he could come back and pitch well, he can eat up some innings. So I think they have some internal options, but I would have tried to find one more piece to add to that roster. Just You can't predict the injuries. You can't predict ineffectiveness, or there's other guys that are, workload wise, it gets a heavy workload. So that's where I thought they came up a little short. But